cozy games, the genre I've probably spent the most time playing in. Games like Animal Crossing, Harvest Moon, and Sonic Adventure 2. And yes, I classify that as a cozy game because let's be real, all we did was play with the chows all day. Sega, bring back the Chow Garden. When I boot these games up, they always transport me to another world, and it felt like I could live there. It was a true escape from reality. I loved how the atmosphere changed across the hours in Animal Crossing, unlocking new enemies in Harvest Moon and seeing them be added to the collection, and taking care of Chow and playing all the fun mini games in the Chow world. These games shaped my childhood and passion for creating. And for my game, Caddy's Tea Service, I want the experience of the world to feel warm and calming, like drinking a hot cup of tea. That tea might burn you and maybe even induce rage, but overall warm. And that's why today I'll be showing you how I made the world feel just a little bit more cozy. Shifts at Caddy's Tea Service can get pretty hectic, and there's nothing better than coming home after a long shift and jumping straight into bed. Well, okay, maybe showering first and then jumping into bed. But right now, there's no bed to rest in, so we need to make a bedroom. One of my favorite areas in Animal Crossing Wild World is actually the starting attic. It's quaint, you've got your sleeping characters, comfy looking beds, and a nice lullaby that plays. It's peak coziness. Here is where you choose your character you'd like to play, or you can go to the phone, time skip to the next day, and check to see if any new hybrid flowers have spawned. No one else? Okay. I wanted to capture a similar feeling to that room, but have a bit more features inside that the player can interact with. I started off with 2 beds, one for the player and the other for his sister, and I made a stairwell that could lead into the restaurant, and a nook for the study. You may have noticed that I used yet another trapezium shaped window. It's just a great way to make the shape of the room feel a bit more interesting without it being too boxy, and by having it poke out from the side, it opens up a view for the player to see outside the window, rather than just having a glass block where you have to take my word for it that there's a window. I added a window to the roof so that in the future we could get some cool lighting into the scene, and I wanted to make a space where Faye could lounge around, read, nap, just standard chill activities. So I made a loft area with this large bag of dried tea leaves that Faye could use as a beanbag. For the sisters area, I did indeed add an imaginary window, but the blinds are down so it doesn't really matter anyways. But what matters is the windowsill ledge where I put a plant next to it that Faye added in hopes that she gets a speedy recovery. I put her favorite toy by her bed to keep her company, which looks awfully familiar, huh? And I added this furnace in the front so that she can keep warm in the colder months. Could even be used as a convenient way to make teas for her in the future. Nightlights are a good way to keep any space cozy, so I wanted to add one near Faye's bed, and somehow I've accidentally made this tradition of adding teapots into every single room, so naturally the light became a teapot oil lamp. One of my favorite details in the room is actually near the staircase, where I managed to barely fit this apothecary cabinet into the wall. In a lot of Chinese herbal shops, they have these large walls lined with big cabinets behind the counter. But since this game is in top-down view, you can't really see what's in the wall. So I was happy I could at least show them in the stairwells instead. I'll add some interactions for the bedroom objects soon, but for now, after all that work, I'm beat. Something's not right. It's too bright. Much better. Lighting is really important in games. It can completely shift the mood of an environment. The game currently doesn't have any added lighting. The colors that I use in the pixel art is the exact same ones you see in the game. For the overall coloring of the game, I went with a much more warmer color scheme, and it does give a default level of coziness, but it hasn't reached its full potential yet. This tea house has so many fire light sources that it should have a much more warmer feeling. So first, we need to add a global light. By changing its color value, we can completely change what time of day it feels like. Add some blue and darkness, it's nighttime, and if we add some orange, it's sunset. Next, we gotta add some light sources to the scene. So for the style of light, I had 3 types in mind that I wanted to try out before settling on one. Now, I'm not an expert, so I don't know the proper name for these, but I'm just gonna call them smooth light, which gives you a very diffused look, flat pixel light, where it's just one color throughout the whole source, and 8-bit gradient light, where the gradient is made up of clear segments and the light closer to the source is more opaque than the ones further away. I tested out the smooth light on the tea warmers first and added a pulsating motion and a flicker effect so that it resembled more of a natural fire. This light was meant to make the world have more dimension, but it ended up just flattening it. I think this style suits games like To the Moon that have a bit more of a detailed pixel art style. So I tried the 8-bit gradient light style next, and I think it really complemented the world a lot better. And I like that it's a bit more detailed than the flat light, so I went with that one. For the kitchen kettle, the fire source is a lot longer, and I didn't want to make an oval shaped light, so I just ended up using a smooth light for it. I kept it a lot smaller this time, and I think it made it look a lot less flat. I think that the smooth light could work if I tweaked it a bit more, but I like the overall look of the 8-bit. I wanted to have some moonlight seep inside, so I used the 8-bit gradient method again to make some subtle light, and I repeated this for all the other windows. This nighttime scene will be good for cutscenes and storytelling, but it's a bit too dark to actually play in, so I wanted to make another version where the train lights were on. Currently there's only one global light, so in order to make the inside brighter, I had to separate the sprites into an indoor and outdoor layer to apply different lighting on both of them. But even with the outdoor night filter, the clouds were still too bright, so I had to make a night version of the background with darker clouds to really sell that look of nightfall. Next, I made the sunset lighting, and when the sun starts to set, it's lower to the ground and the light is quite harsh, so I had some of that sunset take the shape of the window and projected it onto the ground. I also recolored the background so it would have some more orangey hues. As for the morning, the train lights are off, so I made the inside a bit darker than the outside, and as the sun is rising, it would be higher up, so I made the sun rays burst into the room using flat pixel light and paired them with the ground projector lights to complete the look. The sunset should theoretically have like a longer window than the morning because it's lower to the ground, but I was lazy and I was like, no one's gonna notice, so I just reused the same floor projected lights. But now that you know, don't think about it. To top everything off, we added these square emission effects to show the dust that's being captured in the light, and I think it looks really peaceful for the morning. Now with these different times of day, it actually feels like time is passing on the train. Isn't that right, Faye? Faye? Where'd he go? Oh, there he is, making good use of the new study. What's he reading? The Pokemon Sinnoh Handbook? This book was my childhood. Back in primary school, they had these catalogs that they gave out to everyone, and one time they advertised this Pokemon Sinnoh Handbook, and I was a huge Pokemon fanatic back then, so I had to get it. Well, by Pokemon fanatic, I mean I played all of the spin-offs like Pokemon Dungeon and Pokemon Rangers, but that was enough to get me to buy the book. I remember every day after school, I would just flip through all the pages, and the Floatzel illustration was especially my favorite. Because there's gonna be a lot more enemies in Caddy's Tea Service, I wanted to make my own enemy beast collection book just to fill that childhood dream that I had. So I got started with the layout, and originally I tried to fit the enemy and ingredients all onto one page because they're very interlinked as the enemies drop the ingredients. But when I made some possible designs, it was kind of mismatched having the description of the ingredients underneath the enemies, so I decided to separate them onto two different pages. On the enemy page, instead of having a large description for the ingredients, I have details about the enemies themselves. And to help link them to each other, I made a drop section where it shows some icons of the ingredients. I still wanted it to be easy to access the information about the ingredients. If you click on the icons, it takes you to their own respective page. Childhood dreams aside, this page is probably one of the most important in the book because I want there to be two types of game modes. The main game mode is where you're given orders to fulfill, and another is where customers come in unsure of what tea they should get, and they tell you their symptoms, and you have to figure out what the best ingredient is to help them using this book. I wanted the book to be kind of interactive, so when you navigate through the list of enemies, if you hover over them, it will play the enemy's idle animation. If you select, they'll walk, and if you click, they'll play a random animation like attack or hurt, so you can kind of bother the characters. I know I find it hard to read books, so I think that small details like this make it a lot more fun and engaging to look through. You may have noticed that there's some pieces of paper sticking out of the book, and I just added these to make the design more asymmetrical. But while we were making the tutorial system, I had these tips that Caddy would give to Faye to help him understand the game mechanics a bit better, and I thought, why not combine those designs together so that I have less work to do. But also, it's a great way to access those tips again. So I reused the tips for the book, and if you click on the card icon, the game tip will pull out from the side and give you some insight on how to prepare the enemies. In case the player forgets any of the tips that they see during the game, we added this last section where you can access all of the past tips. Wait, Faye, where are you going? Oh, looks like he's trying to make some tea. Maybe the Encyclopedia inspired him to make a new recipe. Okay, so he's adding 2 lily buds, 1 ginkgo leaf, 1 chrysanthemum. Wait, how many lily buds did he add again? Dang it, I forgot. As you can see, there's a big problem with the cooking mechanic. There just isn't enough information being told to the player what ingredients are inside the tea. Every cooking game usually has a good way to show the dish that's being created, whether it's the ingredients that are being shown or a detailed image of the final dish. Since some recipes use the same sprites, it's important to distinguish them through the ingredients. So let's start off with the kettle. When you add ingredients, there should be something to show you what's inside. I started off by trying to use the ingredient item sprites as icons above the kettle, but as soon as I tried that, I realized they were way too large and took up a bunch of space. So I made these small iconized versions of the ingredients. These are actually the same ones that ended up being used for the Encyclopedia. I wanted them to stand out a bit more, so I made these animated cloud bubbles to hold them in. To make it look like the cloud was formed by the boiling water, I made this spawning animation where the steam grew into the cloud bubble. For each added ingredient, I had to make a formation. So I started off with the maximum number of possible ingredients, which is 4. There was only 2 designs that really worked. This 2x2 grid, which was nice and compact, and this curved layout, which I thought was really harmonious with the shape of the kettle, so I went with it. Now that I had a final formation, it was a lot easier to make the other ones. So I did 1, 2, and 3. After the ingredient adding phase ends, you enter the steeping phase, and depending on when you collect the tea, it can determine the tea's ranking. And I just felt like the bar wasn't enough visual cues for the tea's ranking. So I thought it would be really helpful to make the cloud color reflect the ranking. I actually really like how this turned out because the current rank is a lot clearer and easy to see, so if you're rushing around the kitchen, you'll know exactly what the current ranking is for your tea without needing to focus too hard on the bar. The only thing that I feel like could be better is going from the ingredient adding phase to the steeping phase, because the first rank that you can get is silver, and the transition from the default grey cloud into the silver rank is quite hard to tell because there's not much difference between silver and grey. But I added this poof animation on top of it to make the change a bit more noticeable. Now that I had the kettles done, I had to make the ingredient display for the teapots, so when you grab them, you'll know what you got. I made a bunch of possible variations, and it looked fine when there was one teapot, but when they were stacked, it was hard to make a design without compromising the other teapots around it. So I decided that the ingredients would only be displayed on top of the teapot when they're placed down. And when they're being held, I decided it would be best to make a separate piece of UI that would slide out every time you hold a recipe. This way we can show the ingredient displays without compromising the visibility. For the design, I thought a frame with a silhouette of the teapot would be a nice way to visually represent the ingredients inside of it. But once again, 4 ingredients was proving to be too much to fit in nicely, so I scrapped it. Then I did some research to see what type of materials was used to write on in ancient China. And of course I saw the familiar scroll designs, but I came across these bamboo and wooden slips. And I actually saw these for the first time when I visited a tea house in Jiufen where they had these for the menu. So I made something that resembled the wooden slips, and it was perfect. It was a nice and simple design that didn't cover up too much of the screen. So now when you grab a tea, this wooden slip appears showing all of the ingredients. When stacking the wooden slips, I had a few formations in mind. The first one had the next recipe appear behind the last one. This formation was the most accurate to how bamboo slips would fold out, but it looked like the recipe was performing mitosis. So instead I tried a stacking formation which would recenter to the middle of the screen. It was closer to what I wanted, but there was just too much movement going on and it took a bit too long to get to the final destination. So I tried this simple stacking method and I really liked it because the position of the recipes were very predictable, which is great because you'll know exactly where the next recipe is going to end up. Now with all this new UI, the cooking aspect of the game feels much more complete. Since I was on a UI making roll, I thought why not add the pocket display to the UI as well. So we recently added the pocketing mechanic last time. I thought it would be nice to add a display for that one as well, because before when you would pocket a held item, the item would be nowhere to be seen. But now as soon as you hold an item or pocket it, you will always see it in the UI. And that's all for today's video. I think we're getting a lot closer to the warm and cozy feeling that I wanted the world to give off. And these new features that we've added has a lot of reusability for the future of the game as we make more worlds with different and interesting atmospheres. And I know it's been a long time since my last video. I was really focused on developing the game more than making content, but I did really miss making devlogs. There's just something very special about reflecting on everything that we've done and tying it in a pretty bow for you guys to watch. And it also does feel really rewarding to look back on, because sometimes it's like as you move on to the next thing and do the next new feature, you kind of forget the small victories that were made along the way. So if you're a viewer from one of the older videos, I really appreciate you sticking around. And this project has been in the works for a while now, so I think it's really important for me to think about the future of the game, especially creating a more concrete development timeline so that we can tackle those big milestones like the alpha and beta testing. We've been preparing a lot for these playtests. We've even made a tutorial which was previewed in this episode, so there's still a lot left to be shared. But if you want to get more in-between updates about the game, I've recently made a Discord. You can come hang out, talk about the game, or even just talk about your favorite teas. That's what we like to do on there. And I'd like to give a special thanks to my patrons, Julian, Hink, and Mary. You guys are the best. Thanks for your awesome ideas that you guys give, and I just really appreciate you guys in general. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you have any ideas or suggestions, drop them in the comment. If you want to see more of this channel, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.